When we come out into the wilderness, whether it be for a bushcraft weekend or training for survival purposes or for an actual survival egress situation, we take a lot of risks. And risk is part of life. We can't exclude all risks. And if you're someone like me who likes to wander through the wilderness by themselves, then you must be able to mitigate those risks. How you're going to get out of it safely is just as important as being able to identify the risky situation. A lot of people panicking about where you are. If you're dead, you're dead. That's just the way it is. So in this video, I'm going to share with you some of the recent risks that I've seen people take, what I would do instead, and how I mitigate risk while I'm alone in the wilderness. I'm Clarice. Welcome to the Live Ready channel. When it comes to risk, there is a continuum of risks that we face when we're out in the wilderness. And it can be the smallest risk that we take right up to the largest risk. And I'm talking about walking through the bush, tripping over a log, falling, hitting your head and being knocked out, right through to riding around on your motorbike around in the wilderness, which generally isn't advised. But sometimes things happen. Even if I was riding out with a friend, we might have gotten separated. If for survival egress purposes I needed to go and do a recce on a motorbike, maybe I would end up by myself. So risk is there. We need to be careful about the risks that we take, but we can also be reasonable about what that risk is and about how we mitigate those risks. Actually, just coming out into the wilderness by myself is in and by itself a risk. So how do I manage that? Usually I send a pin location to someone with my location saying this is where I'm going to play for X amount of time. If you don't hear from me by the time I finish or by this certain time, then please send a rescue party to come find me. And then usually I would just check in with everyone during that time and make sure that they know that I'm okay. I'm just preoccupied and busy with a whole lot of things. But there are also greater risks that we take. You know, running a survival school in and by itself is risk. If you go on a survival skills course, there are knives around, there are axes around. I said this on a recent YouTube video that I made about setting up the bug out logistics or the logistics for a survival skills course. And I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but there's also axes that follow, and there are sharp sticks, and there are predators around. Even around here, there are leopards in the mountains, and I have actually heard of a leopard that's pulled someone off of their bicycle before. So there definitely is some amount of risk. Do you think now I'm going to get my water out of here? Stay, hang on a second. We're having noodles for lunch. Even just something like being able to find water. There was a group had gone climbing, and they ran out of water halfway through the day, and it was like a massive climb that they were doing, massive climbing day. And the result was that they ended up in a helicopter rescue situation because they'd run out of water. Now I'm talking about people who are experienced here, like experienced outdoorsmen who just were a whole lot hotter than they thought they would be. So it can happen to anyone. It's not like it's just me who goes to play in the wilderness by myself, puts myself in all of these survival situations so that I can have the experience to be able to teach skills to people on courses. It can happen to anyone. You can run out of water, you can get injured, and I think the best is your absolute fail-safe is if you are going to go into the wilderness, make sure that there is someone who knows where you are and how long you're going to be there and what time to expect you back. Failing that, at least, even if you did fall down, hit your head and you died, they'd at least find you. Otherwise, you're going to have a whole lot of people panicking about where you are. At least if you're dead, hey. Sorry, but that's just the way it is. And to be completely honest, I know that God has numbered our days. And if I died today in the wilderness, then I'm dead. Then that was the end of my days. There were no more days left for me. That was the plan for my life from the start. That doesn't mean that I should take unnecessary risks though. So God still requires us to be reasonably responsible even though sometimes we find ourselves in situations where we are at risk or in danger. A good example of this is somebody who's a soldier. You are at serious risk every time you go out to go fight. Somebody who, for example, is a firefighter is in danger every time they go to work to fight a fire even. And those are just part of life's risks. So it helps to ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen? And then plan and prepare for the worst thing to happen and hope for the best. I know that doesn't sound very great. But look, if you're going to take risks, especially in your occupation, at least you're generally going to know what those risks are and you can plan and prepare for those risks. Oh boy, it is called a jet boil for a reason, no? Risk also applies differently to different people. So for me, to wander around the wilderness, let's put the bike aside for a moment. For me to just walk through the wilderness by myself is a risk. For somebody who's got a medical condition who is likely to have an epileptic fit, your risk is higher than my risk is. For somebody who doesn't have any survival skills or doesn't have any medical skills, their risk might be higher than the next person's risk is. So you would have to assess risk in and by yourself and also decide whether the risks that you're taking are worthwhile or worth what you're trying to achieve. A good friend of mine has a sailing quote that he likes to use as a rule of thumb. If you're thinking about putting in a reef, put in the reef. And when you're starting to think about having your second cup of coffee, you can take out the reef. And all that says is, if your instinct says to you that something is wrong here, if your instinct says you should be careful of what you're doing, if your instincts are saying to you what you're doing is too risky, then take pause, either mitigate the risk or step back and go, I should not be doing this. I can count on my one hand. I think there was only twice. If I think hard enough, I'll probably come up with a third time. But there was only twice ever that I've been in the wilderness and I've really thought to myself, I need to get out of here because now I am actually in trouble. One of those times was last year in the Matroosberg when it snowed so heavily. I would actually, from a survival perspective, have been perfectly fine, but I needed to be back at work by the Thursday, and by the Monday the weather had changed so much that it just looked like it was going to get worse and worse. I was going to get absolutely snowed in. My vehicle was already stuck. I had all the batteries of everything that I had failed. So I was starting to run out of battery for cell phone comms. I couldn't reach emergency numbers on the emergency line. That kind of a situation escalates really quickly and it has the potential to become really dangerous. And even if at that moment I was actually perfectly okay, knowing that it can escalate so quickly is enough for me to stand back and say, okay, I'm cutting it here. I'm drawing the line. I need to get out of here. That was the one time. The other time was filming wet weather shelters. I really was on the ridge of a mountain with extreme winds blowing on my way up that mountain, and it doesn't even look like it in the video footage. But there was one point that I was completely exposed on a ridge, on a ledge, and sort of having to move to the location where I had planned to set up a tarp shelter. And I thought to myself, I am now in danger right here where I am. And I sort of took a moment there just to pause and go, okay, if I go back, I'm going to go the way I came, I'll be fine, but I'm still exposed. If I go forward, I know that I will find shelter. I don't know the exact path to the main trail, even though I knew that there was one nearby, but I would more likely be able to find it. So now I'm in a decision-making situation, and that happens with taking risks in the wilderness. You get to a point where you are now at an important decision-making moment where you've got to go, am I going backward or am I going forward? The other time that this happened, and this could be time number 3, which it wasn't an absolute disaster, but we were moving horses between farms in the mountains, and I like to tell this story because it shows how group mentality impacts on risk taking. And we were pretty lost after about 6 hours of riding, but we could see where we needed to be. We just had no way to get where we wanted to get there, which is why I say that we're lost, because at that point one of the group members turned around and said, I'm going back. I can't do this, I'm going back. Now you question yourself, are you going to go back and get lost 6 hours in the same direction again? Or are we going to manage our mentality in this situation and find the way around so that we can actually get to where we were planning to be? Now, recently I've seen some people take risks in the wilderness also. And it can be because you have ill health and you're placing yourself at extreme temperatures. And I've also seen them correct those decisions and go, you know what, I'm gonna call it here, which is wise. It is exactly what we're supposed to do. And the Holy Spirit has this way of silently telling you, you should potentially rethink what you're putting yourself through at the moment. And it might not be that your life is in danger, but it might just have negative effects on your health, on your well-being, or on your mentality going forward. And that applies to your occupation as well. If you're in a risk-taking occupation and you place yourself in a position that might potentially be damaging to you either physically or mentally, psychologically is also a risk factor. Reconsider where you are going with your occupation or in that situation that you're finding yourself in. So the decision-making process in risk-taking is not necessarily clear. It's really going to depend on the situation that you find yourself in. What is clear is that there is an inflection point, a moment of consideration where you need to realize that still quiet voice is saying, stop and take stock of where you are. And it is being able to recognize that moment that will save you, potentially either from being injured or from psychological damage or from actual death. So those are really the takeaway points from this, is when you find yourself in a situation where you really are in absolute danger, just rethink what you're doing. Stop and take a moment. If you can, if you need to move to safety first, then move to safety first. But take a moment to just stop. Take stock of the situation, assess the risk, say, can I mitigate this risk reasonably to the point where it is safe enough for me to continue? And if it is not, if I can't mitigate that risk, if I can't make it safe enough to continue, then I need to withdraw. And if I need to withdraw from this situation, what is going to be the safest way for me to do that? Because when people panic, they make stupid mistakes. Let's turn around and get lost 6 hours in the same direction would have been a stupid mistake. So also just being able to make decisions about how you're going to handle that risky situation, how you're going to get out of it safely, is just as important as being able to identify the risky situation for a start. As I promised, I will tell you what I do to mitigate risk in the wilderness by myself. Generally speaking, I by myself don't go that far out of reach of other people. However, there have been times that I've gone either hiking and camping in a remote location where there is no cell phone reception, at which point I would usually tell a friend or one of the search and rescue guys who sort of work in the environment where I am. I'll send a pin location. I'll say, this is my drop-off time. This is how long it should take me to camp. I should be able to get into reception by hiking up a peak at about 6 p.m. tonight. And then I will make comms. If I don't make comms by that time, then potentially start worrying. This is where I will be trying to get to. And I should make comms again tomorrow morning, and this is going to be my pickup time, whether it be in a day or two, and I will continue to check in via cell phone communication or other communication during that period at sort of these intervals, so that somebody knows that if I'm not checking in, they should be worried about me. The other thing that I tend to do is, if I don't have cell phone communication, I'll tend to have radio communication. So there's a lovely place that I love to go camping, Buffels River camping in the Karoo, it's in the Moordenaars Karoo. And there isn't cell reception very far from the actual farmhouse. So for me to get into cell phone comms during that period, I need to go to the farmhouse. if something happens to me there, either because I fell in the fire or in the river, or I fell off my motorbike, because I do ride my bike on the farm, then I will have a radio with me. I usually put a radio on me as well, on my actual person, not just on the bike, and also a smoke grenade. And I'll usually tell the farm owners, listen, I've got an orange smoke grenade. If you see a plume of orange smoke, be worried. Then if I am hiking or I'm moving around somewhere or I'm riding my bike, I'll generally tell them I'm going to be riding or I'm going to be out, or someone will follow me with a drone, or I'll just kind of stay near the farmhouse or the general vicinity where there are people moving, or on the roads at least, because there are people moving around there. So generally speaking, someone would find me within an hour or two, even if I tripped and fell and hit my head. So that's generally what I would kind of do. There are times that I am really remote, and I mean, that's just my life. I do a lot of things by myself. Most of the time, like 99% of the time, I am alone in the wilderness where I am. About 80% of that time, I am at least walking distance from a road. Now, walking distance is different for different people. And I have a friend who said to me one time, if you go riding around by yourself, just make sure that you've got enough pain medication in your top shirt pocket to make a dead man get up and walk to the road. That's one thing. I mean, that's being able to send out a smoke signal, being able to put up radio comms, and being able to manage a medical condition, whether you're on foot, in a vehicle, or on a bike. Those are things that you need to try and do. So this little bag of mine that's on the motorbike that says ride it like you stole it, that only applies if I'm not riding alone. There is also a smoke grenade in there, and generally my phone is in there. I always keep a knife on my person, so if for whatever reason I need to get myself out of any sort of situation where I'm stuck against something, or I end up in a real survival situation, having a sharp tool on you really is important. It's very hard to make a sharp tool for yourself in the wilderness that really is comparable to a knife. And knives help us build shelter, start fire, and that pretty much comes down to thermoregulation, which is probably the greatest reason why people die in the wilderness, is because they're not able to manage their body temperature. You can live without water for quite a while, but hypo and hypothermia they're massive killers. They're also some of the big reasons why people end up having to get rescued, as I say about the climbers who had to get airlifted by helicopter because they ran out of water halfway up a mountain. So these things happen. So other things that I do to mitigate risks, other than telling people where I am and being able to send out signals, is I don't do stupid things when I'm by myself. If I am riding my bike by myself, I'm not going to go deep into the forest where nobody can find me. I'm going to ride on a farm road where the farmer was just busy putting up fences. So they're also moving around there. I'm not going to wheelie my bike into the bush by myself. I am definitely not going to try and ramp over things where nobody can find me if I fell. So generally speaking, if I'm riding my bike alone in the bush, I'll stick to sort of farm roads and being around people, or I'll tell someone where I am and when to expect me back. There has been 1 or 2 times that I have actually carried in the wilderness also. One, because I'm so remote that I don't expect people. If I do find someone there, then I'm potentially in danger. And 2, there are predators around. So if I absolutely need to defend myself against a predator, I'm going to have a hard time doing it with my little EDC knife. And I'm going to actually have to take him out of danger first, and because he'll be defense number 1 is hunter. Defense number 2 is generally just an EDC knife. And for times when I really am very remote by myself, or I expect that if I run into company it's going to mean trouble, but I shouldn't run into company at all, then I'll carry in the wilderness. But there's also a risk with carrying by yourself in the wilderness. If something goes wrong and you end up getting hurt, you're going to be in big trouble if you're remote and out of comms. If you do ever find yourself in a risk situation where you need to make some decisions, remember that Psalm 71:20-21 says, "You who have shown me great troubles, you will revive me again and bring me out from the depths of the earth. You will comfort me on all sides." And take that, ask God to comfort you, and ask Him to just calm you down and help you to just make your decisions based on what kind of risk you're willing to take and what kind of risk you should be taking, because He will absolutely guide you in that situation. If you've liked this video, remember to hit like and subscribe. Follow me on social media. There's a lot of the everyday live ready stuff that goes onto Instagram and TikTok and onto the Facebook page. And until the next time, live ready. Oh, that looks good, eh? Here, I'll give you a bite. Come here. Eat noodles. Very good.